Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. I am going to talk about filters again on the Iridium because I love the Iridium. But also, I did a previous video called Filter Basics, which you can check out. But I wanted to go through and show kind of almost a lost in time kind of technique. And the reason I say that is because when I look at patches, I just don't see this technique being used very much. So maybe it's one that people don't use as much because I think it's really cool. So anyway, let's start off with, I did an init patch, but we need to add a little bit of character in here. Yeah, let's get some release going. Okay. Just something simple like that, all right? And one thing that's cool on the Iridium is right here I have the frequency overlapped, and this is the 3.0 version of the operating system, and this is in beta currently. I'm helping test it. So if you don't see this, it's under tools. If you want to look for it, under tools, under filters, and you can say that you want to show the analyzer. So if you have that enabled, you can actually see your frequencies. And why that's so important, well, first off, it helps you just visualize. You can kind of see what things sounds like and how much harmonic content you have. But what's important is the volume of each of those, so you can see the heights of each of those harmonics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use resonance, see how I can add to some of these. And let's line it up on the second harmonic here, like this, and let's just amplify that. So we can make a different tone, and then it's also cutting off the the higher ones as well. Now, one thing is you have two filters. So in the first video I skipped this, but one of the things that's really cool is you have two filters. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna bring up resonance, and I'm gonna grab this guy right here. I gotta be a little careful here. So let's say we say, oh, well, we want to use that sort of bright tone by overlapping these two filters like this. And one of the problems with that, which I'm sure a lot of you are guessing what I'm going to do right now, is now if I hit a note an octave lower or an octave higher, you'll see that the harmonics don't line up anymore. So see how this one, the fundamental is right there, and then I have this one and this one. And if I go down, you'll see now it's shifting, but the filter's just staying where it is, right? Well, key tracking. That's what I wanted to mention, because I think it's one of those things that is so powerful and important, but to a subtractive synthesizer, but you just don't see it that much. And the Iridium kind of gives you a perfect environment for exploring it, because you can see, like, I can directly dial this one in now. Actually, let me turn key tracking to 100%. For both of these guys. And one of the things, while I'm turning on key tracking, the filter does slip around slightly, so you have to retune them. So for this one, for the first one, we were taking this second harmonic, and for this one, I think we were grabbing the one right next to it. Maybe it was this one. Yeah. Okay. So now that I'm using key tracking, now I'm getting that same filter treatment on each of the voices. Now remember, every single voice, there's 16 voices, every single voice is getting its own set of filters, which is pretty awesome. So if you just take off a little bit of release here, it's a little bit long. Now, even that, I mean, you start to get, to me, it's always a bit deceptive when you get a voice sometimes. I like to put effects on it just to kind of check out what it would sound like. So I like to put a little bit of chorus and reverb on it. 1 second, let me load up this mid one. That one. Okay. So when you play it dry, sometimes you're like, well, it doesn't sound very good. But when you put a little effect on it, okay? So it's interesting to me sometimes, I like to leave these two guys queued up because sometimes I just add those on to just kind of get an idea of where I'm at. So we have that treatment. Now let's add in a third filter. Well, you're like, well, where's the third filter? Well, you can see this digiformer right here. And I'm going to go to the routing to actually explain this. So if you look here in the routing, so there's a routing button. You have your oscillators, you have your dual filter, which think of that as a kind of a special filter. You can't actually take the two filters and run them in series. They can run in parallel. And but if you want filter in series, you have the digiformer, which can actually act as a filter, which is really cool. So you can really get into this here. So let me go in and let's add a filter. And I'm actually going to add a 12 dB band pass. That's what I want. Okay, so let me play a note. And you're seeing the frequencies again. And you see I can put these guys around wherever I want. And like we did before, I'm going to put key tracking on this, which is nice, right? The digiformer has key tracking. That's important. So let's pick out maybe something in this range. Okay. You can really shape that now. And of course, if you wanted something less bright, because you might be thinking, you just bring something back on the fundamental. And one of my favorite things is on the filters. There's a lot to discuss on the filters on the Iridium, obviously, but you have different filter models. So not only do you just have different types of filters, but you have filter models as well. So you can go through and change those. So you have SVF. There's a new one called Razor, which why don't I use that just for fun since it's a new one. Let me go to filter 2. Let's turn both of them to Razor, which gives a little more different profile for the resonance. But now let's go ahead and pick a different type. So, and I know if you're getting lost here, there's a lot of stuff. So I'm picking a different type now. And you don't hear much, so it's like, why aren't we hearing much? I just made both, I increased the saturation a lot on both of these filters, so why aren't we hearing like I'm hearing a little almost distortion there, but why aren't we hearing a lot? Well, if you look at the routing, that's because everything we're generating in the dual filter is basically being filtered out by the digital former. So if we go back here, we can say, let's change the routing and let's put the digital former in front of this. And then now we're getting a totally different tone. And the filter is adding a lot of saturation. So let's try that one out with the effects. Let's just see how that one sounds. Give me 1 second here. Okay, kind of interesting, kind of cool. But let's go back to this guy one more time, and let's turn off the routing, and let's go back to filter 1. Oh, I was on a filter, sorry. So one last thing that I wanted to show, because that was kind of the technique I wanted to show. Let me turn the resonance down a little bit on these guys. See, because this is a different way to use filters. I mean, usually you add a filter envelope and you have the filters sliding around, right? But this technique is just really saying I'm going to use the filter to sculpt and almost like EQ every single voice, and then when you play it, it's just a really nice way to explore. And what I like is after you're done, you can kind of like save this, and then you can go back and say, okay, well, let me go to oscillator 1. Now let's mess with this and pick a totally different wavetable. Just trying this out, see. Definitely getting some some hotness there. Let me back down the type to let's go to saturated instead, because that's a little much. I think that was, there we go. Okay. And you don't have to do like organ kind of sounds, you know, you can just do something else totally different, you know. We can change this guy out and just throw in a good old sawtooth. And let's change this guy around. Or we can turn this guy off. You know, that's the other thing. You can take this guy out. Ooh, actually, that bandpass. That sounded cool. See, I like that. I mean, that was a totally mistake on my part. But you see, this is the sort of thing, like when you're messing with this stuff, it's got a cool... Well, now we're getting in the territory where we're really knocking stuff out of the... Oof. Yeah, I'll turn this off just to say. Okay, so we can... Here's just with the filters by themselves, this one. All right, so I'm going to show you this patch I did. It sounds, you know, a little bit different than that. I was just playing around with... the filter, or excuse me, the distortion effect, which actually I kind of think is underrated on the Iridium. I really like the distortion. So I'm going to play a couple notes, and if you kind of just listen to how this, you know, goes between the channels, I like it. All right, so there's that. So you can see on this one I did something pretty similar where I'm using two filters together, and then I'm just using key tracking to move those around. So instead of using an envelope, this is another thing you can explore that's using filters. And why is that cool? Well, with something like the Iridium, you have so much flexibility with each of the filters that it gives you a different way to just explore and shape sounds. Whether you're looking for something punchier, with a pluck that kind of like comes through the mix a bit more, you know, because remember, filters can be animated too. So there's obviously you can use this technique and then also animate them and do all sorts of stuff, which maybe in a future video I'll do that too and show that. So anyway, thanks a lot. Take it easy. Bye.